Welcome to PlanStronger TV. I'm your host, David Holland. I'm joined on today's program by financial author Steve Repak. Steve is an Army veteran who became a certified financial planner and teaches people how to get out and stay out of debt. We'll also discuss everyone's favorite subject, budgeting. Okay, how about we call it a spending plan? Either way, it'll be great information. I'll also share with you the do's and don'ts when meeting with an advisor. Let's roll. All right, welcome back. Very excited to bring another good guest to you. Great guest, Steve Repak, who's joining us from North Carolina. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, David.
You're very welcome. So you come to us from North Carolina?
Yeah, from Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us here in the WDSE studios. So I want to talk with you. I think your background is just fascinating, and I'd love to talk with you about how you got into doing financial planning. Steve's a certified financial planner and has been doing that for how many years?
Gosh, it's been 19 years now.
19 years, wow. Okay, well that's excellent. So tell me your story, or share with the viewers a story, because I think how you got into doing financial planning work really, of course, serves as the foundation of what you teach and you write about, and of course you're the author of a couple books as well, the 6-Week Money Challenge.
That's right.
And Dollars and Uncommon Sense.
That's it.
Okay. We can't get away with just common sense?
It's got to be uncommon sense.
Okay. All right, so share with us a little bit about your background, because it's very compelling.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique story. You know, I come from humble beginnings. I grew up poor. You know, I never remember going hungry. I always had food. I always had clothes and shelter. But, you know, kids made fun of the clothes I wore. So, you know, right out of high school, I actually joined the military. And what was so cool is it was the first time that I saw real money. And I was getting paid, I think, $700 every 2 weeks. And I was like thinking, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I'm making so much money. Because like I said, I just grew up poor. And throughout my military career, even though that I was making money, I was accumulating credit card debt. And just to cut things really quickly is that after 12 years of service, I left the military with $32,000 of credit card debt. And the ironic part about it is I got a job in finance. So here I was, fresh out of the military with $32,000 of credit card debt. And my job was to sit there and help people with their money.
How about that?
It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
That is, well, it's funny how our paths take us through and put us in a place to then, you know, give advice or do something that we have a personal understanding of. And of course, a lot of what you've written about and talked about and taught about is that you're teaching people about how to budget, how to be smart, how to save, and get out of debt. And so that experience, of course, is, I mean, you couldn't have had better training.
Yeah, and that's the truth, is that I think with me, I think that it's definitely unique because I get to work with military families, I work with nonprofits, and so I work with both ends of the spectrum. So I'm working with people that don't have a lot of money, that are really struggling with credit card debt, and then I have wealth builders that I've worked with in the past. You know, they have a ton of resources, and it's definitely, we think that it's easier at one spectrum than the other, and it's not, is that most people think the same about money, and if we can get people to change their money attitudes and the way they think about money, we can start changing their results.
All right, so one of the big principles I know you speak about in your teaching in your books is that you talk about if we can just spend less than we make, things kind of work out. Why is that concept? I mean, I know that sounds like such an easy concept, and we all go, well, that's nothing, and we need 2 certified financial planners to share with us today about. But why is that concept so hard?
You know, it doesn't matter if you make $1,000 a week or $10 a week, is that if you spend more money than what you make, you end up with no money. And I've seen it on both ends of the spectrum. Like I said, I remember, you know, earlier on in my career, I had this lady that came in. She, I think she sold software for a living, and she, I think she made about around $300,000 a year. And when she came to the office, I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, you know, what am I'm going to get to do all this great stuff with her? And she was basically saying, Steve, I need you to exercise some stock options because I can't make my credit card payments. And I'm like thinking to myself,
wow,
you got $300,000 you're making, and you can't even make the minimum payments on your credit cards. And so I kind of learned earlier in my career, it wasn't how much money you make, it's how much money you spend. And it, like I said, it didn't matter if you're in the military and you're making $700 a week, or you're selling software or medical devices and making $100,000 a week. Is that if you spend more, you're gonna run out of money.
Is part of the challenge our American culture of, you know, there's so much out there that we are bombarded with about things we can spend money on, and we get used to a certain level of spending, or things that we buy, and then there's the next level. Is it part of that? Is that part of why we have such a hard time with it?
I think so. It's like when we buy stuff, you know, we have those chemicals, those endorphins that our brain releases, and we just like to spend money because it makes us feel good. I remember being in the military, is that I would buy me a video game, right? And I love that video game. I would take it home, I'd play with it, I'd sleep with it, I'd name it. And once I was done with the video game, I would put it aside, I'd go back to the PX, I'd buy me another video game, and I'd do the same thing over and over again. And I think that's what we do with culture, is that we think things are going to make us happy, and once that feeling goes away, we're out there spending it. It doesn't matter if it's a car or a house or clothes or entertainment, is that we're always looking for that next rush. And the people that are good with their finances, they're able to control their emotions, and they think differently about money.
They're satisfied.
They're satisfied.
Yeah. So let's talk about the word that a lot of people don't want to hear, Steve. Ready?
Yeah.
Budget.
Budget.
Okay. So maybe we'll call it something else. Let's call it a spending plan, right? But it's still something that a lot of people don't like to do. I think part of it is that people are being told that they have to restrain themselves, or if they're in a relationship, maybe the other person might, you know, kind of beat them over the head with it, and instead of it being a budget, it's a bludgeon. Yeah. So how can people get, I don't know, comfortable or even excited about a budget?
Yeah, I don't know if it's changing the word, because when we think of budget, we think of diet, and if we think of diet, it's like I have to deny myself. But if we can come up with a spending plan that, hey, I'm starting off here, I want to get from point A to point B, and I want to allocate my money and keep everything in balance, you'll do a lot better. Because when we think about, oh, I got to go on a budget, I can't go out to eat, I can't go on vacation, I can't have this good stuff, and that's what kills everybody. But if you can allocate your money saying, hey, you can do these things, but we have to restrain it a little bit. For example, we say, hey, you know, I like to go out to eat. Well, instead of going out to eat every single weekend, maybe just go out one weekend. Or if you love going to the movies, instead of going to the movies, you know, every single weekend, you know, maybe we go once a month. So you still want to be able to treat yourself, but without having to waste so much money on stuff to make you happy. So like I said, it has to come down to balance, and just the understanding that, hey, all you have to do is spend a little bit less. You don't got to sit there and get rid of everything, just a little bit less.
Okay, that makes sense. So how about this challenge, you know, and I'm sure you've read the statistics like I have, Steve. There's a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck, a high percentage, a bigger percentage, I think, than most people realize. How can people break that cycle of, you know, they just make it to Friday or just make it to payday, and then if they miss that paycheck, it's a problem. How can they break that?
You know, it's so funny is that if you ask somebody how much money they make, they can tell you how much money they make. If you ask that same question, how much money you're spending, they can account for maybe 80% of their spending. So I tell people that, hey, if you're making $1,000 a week, but your employer only paid you $800, would you get mad at it? And they're like, gosh, I'd be mad at it. So it's the same thing with your spending, is that if you'll track your spending, then you can identify things that you can either cut out altogether or just reduce. But most people, they live paycheck to paycheck because they're just not tracking where their money's going.
Well, and that spending and how well they're able to meet their bills, of course, that affects the next subject I want to get into, and that's their credit. Yeah. So everybody wants to know, how do I build credit? How do I keep good credit, avoid having bad credit? Because part of our American culture is we're kind of evaluated on our credit or our credit score. There's even dating sites that you date based on your credit score. But I mean, so it's a big part of our society and our ability to acquire things in the future. So What do you say to people about how to build good credit?
You know, I built credit, I built it the wrong way. Like I said, I left the military with $32,000 of credit card debt, and so I was able to build credit, but it's the wrong way. But the thing is that I think credit takes time, and it works, credit works just like trust, is that it takes a long time to build and a short time to mess it up. And number one is that you gotta pay your bills on time. If you're not paying your bills on time, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, whatever your credit utilization ratio is that you gotta pay your bills on time. And I think then the next step is that, you know, when you're trying to build credit, you know, especially for young people, what I tell them to do is that either buy like a gas card or some type of secured credit card. And what you do is, like, I use the gas card just to make it an easy example, is that what you're going to do is that whenever you buy gas, you're only allowed to put gas on that credit card. You can't put any kind of knickknacks or snacks, just gas.
Okay.
But every time that you use that credit card, what you're going to do is you're going to move money from your checking account to your savings account, and you're going to do that every time you do it. And at the end of the month, you're going to take that money that you put into your savings back in your checking, and then you pay off your gas bill. So that's one of the easiest, quickest ways to build your credit if you're young, or even if you're older and your credit is messed up.
So it's a deliberate process.
A deliberate process.
Okay, that's good. Now, should people check their credit? There's a website, annualcreditreport.com.
Yes, that's correct. Is that we're entitled to 3 credit reports per year from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian to check our credit. And now most people, when they order their credit reports, they order all 3 at once. And I recommend that you can do that, but just do one at a time and kind of space it out through the year. So maybe order one in January, one in May, and then maybe one in September.
Does checking it affect your credit?
No, that's one of those misconceptions, is that if I check my credit, you know, it's gonna mess it up. So number one is that you got to check your credit, because there's going to be mistakes that are in there, and there's a lot of big cases of identity theft, and I've seen that throughout like doing the military presentations, is that you'd have soldiers that are deployed overseas, and their parents are their parents or spouses are stealing their identities, and so you think that, hey, can I trust my friends and family? Sometimes you can't, but if you order your credit report just to verify, to make sure that those bills are your bills and not somebody else's.
Well, when you're in the military, you have access to computers, and you can go online and you can check your credit.
Yes.
Okay. So if you can do it in the military, the people watching the program, who are maybe a lot of them are not in the military active duty, they have access to computers. They can go and check their credit.
Exactly. Annualcreditreport.com.
Okay.
And that's something that they must do. It's almost like doing you do your physicals. You know, you take a physical, well, you need to do your financial checkup, and your credit report is part of your financial checkup.
That makes sense. So speaking of credit and debt, I know that you are a big fan of paying off debt, staying out of debt. Is there such a thing as good debt versus bad debt?
You know, the truth is that there's no such thing as good debt, but there's 3 instances where bad debt is okay to accumulate. And you say, well, Steve, what is that? And number one is that if you said, Steve, I want to buy a house. So I think that is okay. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that it's not bad debt to buy a house. If you say, I want to send my kids to college, I think that an education is a good place to invest. You know, if you have to get
if you have to finance it, it's a good investment.
And then start a business. I mean, probably one of the best places to work for is for yourself. And so if you do your due diligence and do your research and stuff, I think that's another place where I'm not saying it's good debt. I'm just saying that it's not bad debt.
In your experience working with a lot of people, you say all walks of life, and maybe some people in the military, what are some of the most dangerous forms of debt you've seen, where somebody, you go, golly, that's something that everybody should try to stay away from, or just something to be really careful about?
There's 2 biggies. Number one is the credit cards, because the credit cards, those are just, you say, well, gosh, I only put $500 on the card. I only put, $50 or $75, and it just accumulates. The second one is student loans, because I've just seen a big problem with student loans, because the colleges will, the kids will sit there and take as much money as they'll give them, and they'll spend that, and then they get out of college without a degree, with $100,000 worth of debt, and then they got to figure out how they have to pay for it. That's kind of scary.
It sounds like, in your experience, that each time when you were in the military and you got raises, that there was more income there, and then that allowed you to then get greater credit, right? And I imagine this happens to a lot of people as they build their careers, they make more money, they then are able to qualify for more credit, and the credit card companies, they have their business model, and they're saying, hey, here's somebody who's using our credit, will extend them even more. Yeah. But it's a dangerous game, isn't it?
It is. I mean, like I said, businesses are there to make money, and the credit card companies, I mean, they're providing a service, and if you manage them properly, you can manage your credit properly. But most people, they kind of abuse it, and like it says that you just have to be smart when you're out there trying to develop credit, and not, you know, like with me. When I was in the military, I said, gosh, as a private first class E3, I'm making X amount of money. As soon as I get promoted, all my problems are going to go away because I'm going to make more money, right? And then the next thing you know, I'm an E4, and then I'm a sergeant, and then a staff sergeant. And as throughout my whole career, I always considered that if I would only make more money, all my problems would go away. But the problem was, it didn't matter how much more I made, I kept on spending more. And once I learned how to spend less, I'm like, where does this magic money come from?
Right. Yeah. Wow. Well, that brings me to really one of the big things I wanted to talk about. And it's how do people reduce debt? They're in debt. They've got the credit cards. They've got the student loans, whatever the case may be. How do they then work through, you know, they always talk about work your plan. You know, how do they build a plan and then execute that plan to work their way out of debt?
Yeah. It's going to be, step number one is hard. I mean, you don't use your credit card. You know, I mean, it's like if you want to get out of debt, you can't use your credit card. And you say, Steve, that's just common sense. And it's not true, because that's the same thing for me. I had to quit using my credit card. So I joke around. I said I pulled out a Tupperware bowl. I filled that Tupperware bowl full of water. I took my credit cards. I put it in a Tupperware bowl. I took that Tupperware bowl and put it in the freezer. So if I was tempted to use my credit cards, I would have to wait for a long time for them to thaw out.
You're not kidding.
No, I'm serious. And so step number one is you can't use your credit cards. And then, you know, the next step is that you got to know where you're spending your money, because my problem was, it didn't, you know, even if I didn't use my credit cards, I was still spending more money than what I made. So I had to come up with a spending plan to figure out, hey, what can I cut out? What can I reduce? And once I did that, I built my savings, because I always had those emergencies. I would drive down the road, clunk, clunk, clunk. My transmission would go out. Well, gosh, I don't have any money in savings. What did I have to do? Pull out my credit card. And then my last step is I just put a plan to get out of debt. And, you know, after a few years, I finally got all of my credit cards paid off.
So you got yourself in a position where, you said, okay, I'm going to, and you did this very deliberately, I'm going to spend less than I make. And you took that savings, or that free cash, and then you applied it toward the credit cards, you meet all the minimum payments, and then work your way down from, say, the highest rate to the lowest?
You know, there's two rules of thought. There's the snowball and the avalanche. You know, the Dave Ramsey, he likes the snowballs, because some people, they like to win those small, you know, battles, those battles. They want to knock out a credit card and work the next one. I actually did the opposite. I looked at the debt that was paying the highest interest, and that's the one that I tried to knock out the quickest, because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what's going to save me more money. But people are just wired differently. So for people that might be into winning the small battles, well, the snowball method will work. If you're saying, Steve, I want to get out of credit card debt the quickest and the cheapest way, then you concentrate on the highest interest. But either way, you got to stick with the plan. And if you do it, you're fine.
I think you make a great point, Steve, and that is that you have to do a plan that's going to work for you, that you'll actually do. There are different ways of getting out of debt in terms of how you either go for the highest interest rate or you try to knock out. Because if knocking out some of those smaller ones keeps you motivated, well, then you're going to win, versus you say, well, I've got to work on the one with the highest interest rate, and it just doesn't motivate you. You're not going to do it. It's not going to work. So, I mean, those are the big things. So how about once somebody has started down that path, what do you say to somebody who's maybe made that final payment on their credit card? What do you say to them then?
I mean, congratulations, cut it up and don't use it again. And that's the thing with credit consolidation, and is that never fixes the problem. It fixes the situation right then. But if you want to stay out of credit card debt, number one is that you don't charge, or at least you're going to be intentional to make sure that if whatever I pay on my credit card at the end of the month is going to be paid off. Because that's what I do. I mean, I use credit cards, but at the end of the month, I don't care how nasty the bill is, that credit card is going to be paid off at the end of the month, because I don't want to carry no balances for the following month.
Excellent. Great advice, Steve. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thanks for having me on, David. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you. All right, it's time for the scoop. The do's and don'ts of meeting with an advisor. Now, I've talked on this program more than once about some of the things I want you to be careful about when you're working with advisors. Why? You are doing the hard part, or have already done the hard part, which is to save for retirement. And I want you to get the best advice you can get to help you further your goals. So, Let's start with an email I got. Maybe this will kind of underscore why I share with you about advisors and why you need to be careful. Ready? I'll read you the email. This is one I got directly sent to me. We're hosting a massive invite-only event here in blank city for producers with genuine interest in increasing their annuity production. I would love to speak with you directly when you have a few minutes for me. The event is blank month and will be held at blank hotel. We can cover the entire cost of the trip, and you're not obligated to do business with us at any time. Our specialty is working with agents hands-on and taking them to the mega producer level. This will be a completely unique experience, on and on and on and on. Reach out to me, talk to me, do business with us. We'll train you how to be an advisor. Oh, I left out my favorite part. And we'll show you how our advisors close business on the first appointment after the seminar. That's a problem. You should not expect to have somebody try to do business with you on the first meeting with them. You're just getting to know them. You're trying to share with them your goals with them. And I think advisors need to be trained to be better advisors, not to be better salespeople. There, I said it. Now, let me talk about when you go to meet with an advisor. Before you go, the first question is, how did you meet that advisor? How did you hear about them? I don't care how you heard about them. If you saw an advertisement, somebody recommended you see them, I want you to keep your guard up. You need to treat somebody that you're going to meet with that you have been referred to by a friend because of their experience the same as if you have picked them out of the phone book. Okay? When you go to meet with them, bring a friend or spouse to the office. Be skeptical of advisors that are going to come to your house. My opinion is they should have an office, and you should be able to go and meet there. But whatever you choose to do, you need to think about what you want before you go. Let me dig into this. You need to know what you need and what you want before you go so that you get what you're looking for, right? I remember one time my wife and I went to a music store. We wanted to get a guitar. I can't remember if it was she or maybe it was me. One of us wanted to get guitar lessons, but we came out of the store with a piano. So we didn't go in looking for a piano, but we came out with one. So you want to make sure that what you go in shopping for is what you get. Now, of course, the job of an advisor is to advise you, to identify things you may not know, to have you think in different ways about your situation that maybe you can't see the forest for the trees. But have in mind what you're looking for. I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for income. I'm looking for a way to protect my money. I want an estate plan. I want to do different things. I want to address long-term care. Have in your mind what you're going there for so that when you go in, you don't come out with a piano. The other thing I want you to do is write down at least 10 questions to ask before you go. Think through what you want to know because advisors, well, they're trained. I read you the email. They're trained on selling, or at least that's what some of them do. And you want to make sure what you're looking for is addressed. Leave your checkbook at home. Contrary to the training, you're not going to do business on the first appointment. Get there 15 minutes early so you can observe the office. And here are 5 questions I think you really must ask. There's a lot of questions you could ask. Here are 5 big ones. Number 1, which credentials and licenses do you have? Write them down. Who is your supervisor and regulator? Are they able to do whatever they want? Do they have somebody that supervises them at their firm? How are they regulated? That'll tie into their licensing. Number 3, how long have you been doing this? And equally important, how long will you do this? If they're going to retire in a couple years themselves, is this the relationship you want to create? Number 4, will you put all of your recommendations in writing, including any fees and expenses and what you are paid? Some of the first part of that, a lot of advisors will do very willingly, but when you get to the part about how they're paid, some will get nervous, some will become hesitant, some will be looking at the floor or somewhere else, not really want to talk about it. You should know what they're paid, and know what kind of service you can receive ongoing. And number 5, will you act as a fiduciary? Will you act in my best interest? Will you be my advocate? That's what we're looking for. You're not looking for somebody to present a financial product to you. You're looking for advocacy. We want somebody to stand up for us and help us do what's best for our situation. We don't need somebody to sell us something. We need guidance. We need personalized advice. And I think those are the key things for you to keep in mind when you work with any advisor. You know what I'm going to say? If you do those things, be mindful of the questions you should ask and what's best for you. You'll plan stronger.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.